ended up in technical writing. It was just a journey that kind of, took me there. So from there, that was also the time when in India, dot-com boom was happening. Many of younger people over here probably would not know about that time. You guys would have been in school. But at that time, so everybody was joining dot-coms, and dot-coms was a big thing. So I also joined dot-com. That organization folded. So that is where I first wrote about. So print media gave me that grounding in how to write for a magazine. And then from there, I went to dot-com, from where I learned how to write on web, which was very different. My next stop was e-learning, which I joined in NIT and then in Lionbridge in Mumbai. So over there, so that again, so throughout it was content, but different genres of content. So e-learning brought that instructional thought in the mind that, this is how this is how you look for gaps. This is how you look for you know information gaps to make sure that when a learner or a reader is reading something, he or she can understand. From there, I got on. That's from after e-learning, technical writing happened. I joined Emphasis in Bangalore as the sole technical writer in the organization. So we had a customer who with whom we had a big account, and they just wanted some help with technical writing also, and that's how that journey started for me and for Emphasis. Uh, Very soon when I started working there, I realized that there was a lot of scope to sell. Emphasis is a services company; it's not a product company. So we said that there was a scope to sell technical writing also as one of the services. And with my then manager, we started almost canvassing within the organization that, hey, look at the service, you can sell it to your clients also. It took us about 2 years to get there, but we were lucky enough to have a 40 people technical writing team over there, and we catered to different to different clients, customers across the organization. From there, I joined GT Nexus, where I first time set up the team right from the scratch, and then Odessa, where I kind of repeated that experience with more learning.
Great, Surbhi. I'm sure that this experience of yours is going to help all of us today. So, you are involved in setting up the team, planning how many members you should hire, and so on. So, how do you envision structuring the documentation team? What is the checklist that you keep in mind while planning the team?
Shivani, I would answer this, but with a pinch of salt. As you have heard that wherever I have set up the team, I've started the team. So that situation is very different from somebody where already there is a team of technical writers and you are trying to restructure. That honestly comes a little later. The first, if you're starting the team, and I would answer that what I think is the best way, but I'm trying to answer your question. Checklist, I usually do not start with checklist because simply because I never had that luxury to start with a checklist. It was more like I joined and there's so much work to be done, so get it done. Right. And many a times I had to do the reverse also, where I had to tell the managers that they said, so like in GT Nexus, it's a funny anecdote. When I joined, they said that we have already approved 10 positions for writers, hire 10 writers. And I was like, what would they do? Your BAs are not ready to give they don't know what, they don't have it in their process to give the inputs. We don't even know what we need to write. What would I do with 10 writers? And I had to fight with management saying we don't need 10 writers. It was like really, really funny. Over here, people are telling me have 10 writers. I'm like, no. And I was scared because I was like, what would I do with 10 writers? There's nothing. The base has to be done. So now I would go back to your question that the way I started, and if I am in an now doing that, having done that for about, good 7, 8 years, if I have to go with the checklist, what would I go with? So the way I started was always like first getting 2 to 3 people team, solid team, right? And by solid, I mean people who understand writing. Uh, Preferably one a little senior person one junior can also work, but you need a little senior person because you need those ideas. There are two type of ideas. A young person, a junior person comes with fresh ideas, amazing. A senior person comes with ideas that are also coupled with knowledge. So to start, if you have to start things from the scratch, then you need a combination of both. You need these new ideas. I'm too old to get those new ideas, right? And you also need these ideas that are coupled with knowledge and experience, because we have to execute ideas and get something out of it. The ideas at the end of the day have to be productive. And with writers, unless you're working in a very, very mature setup like, say, Oracle or NSAP, organizations which have been around for very long, who have invested in documentation for very long, in medium size and small companies, more often than not, writers have to become their own advertisement themselves, because writing, whether we like it or not, kind of takes a back seat. And they wake up only when, their customer says, and they realize that they, a certain knowledge has left. So obviously it's different for mature organizations. So we need to do initially all these things. So now coming back to the questions structure, I usually prefer a flat structure unless there is a need to have a hierarchical structure within the organization. By organization here, I mean team, within the team. Also, I prefer a mix of attitudes and the mix of skills, which also can be translated into experience levels. You need some people with, a mid, by some experience, I say at least 5 to 6 years experience, 7 years experience, eight if you can, if you have that uh, luxury, great, right? So 8, 9 years, anything between 6 to 8 years experience. You need some people with lesser experience too, because as I say, new ideas come in. Budget also is a constraint. Usually, when you're starting a team, you're unlikely to get a very free hand in terms of budget. So to balance that budget, to balance what we need to do, balance the flow of ideas, that type of structure. In terms of skill, uh, among writers, among our community, you would find people who are some people are very good at code writing, and some people are very good at tools, right? So if you have at least one person who has that mindset to explore new tools, to learn new tools, big plus, because that helps. You would need to do that. Similarly, you can have very technical type of writing, which gets into API writing and installation guides and network diagrams, architectural guides, and end user writing. So basically a combination of all these skills, or at least aptitudes and attitudes. If I mean, you can't have one person only for functional, one person only for API, one more often than not, you would not have that luxury. So if you don't have that luxury, at least an aptitude for that, that somebody who is open to explore, somebody who has tried, and that aptitude you can measure in many ways. So that's what I go for. Checklist. Honestly, I don't have any checklist. It's but my this thing is, or what has worked for me, I would put it that way, is that people who come with more open attitude, at least for the teams when you're starting the team, where your structures are defined, where your work role is defined, your output is defined. There you can there you can have a checklist saying that, I want this type of skill more, I want people to know this type of, these type of, or these specific tools. But where we have to set all these things, then an attitude, a mix of the attitude which is open to try out different things, more than that, open that, some good ideas would be shot down, because that happens. So that becomes my checklist.
Okay, so now that you have all these things ready in your mind that okay, I want this type of people, these type of people. So and you start with the hiring process. So you must be receiving hundreds of applications, right? So what is the first impression about the resume that you catch? So when you go through the profiles, if you have to name three top things you look in and in any candidate, what are those things, and how do you screen and shortlist the
Okay.
resume?
So I'll just share an anecdote which happened in my first job, and from there I would reach the answer. Uh, it was my first job. I was an intern, and my boss, who used to sit right next to me, we were hiring somebody, and he got a CV. And in a minute, and he's just doing this, no, 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 no. And I turned to him and said, Govind, you haven't even read the CV. And he said, this CV has this is the CV of a person who has spelled his state wrong. So it was Tamil Nadu, two words. Okay. Tamil Nadu, one word. Tamil Nadu is two words. So Tamil Nadu, one word. And he said, if you can't spell your own state right, I don't want you as a writer. So that's my first thing I see. I shared that anecdote and that kind of, and obviously to a 20-year-old girl that seemed illogical and harsh too. But I kind of live by those things now. So when I look at CV, I definitely, because we are talking about writers. So, and I'll tell you why probably I didn't understand why Govind was doing it. As I said, when a 20-year-old me didn't understand. Today it's different. So, two things. One is I definitely look for that CV. I don't go as harsh as Govind did, but I'm not very different too. I would be very clear about it. If a CV does not have, if your CV has spelling mistakes or grammatical mistakes, that's a first no for me. That's if clean CV, in if I have to put it positively, clean CV is what I look for. First thing, because we are writers, and if we cannot write our CV right, then there's a bigger problem over there, right? So for me, when people when I, and trust me, I'm not exaggerating. I find many CVs with grammatical mistakes, many CVs with and basic grammatical mistakes. So if you see that, so then it reflects two things for me. Either you do not know or you do not care. Probably you know if you have worked for 7 years, you know subject verb agreement. You know that with singular it's is or with plural it's are. But then you are not taking something about it, you are not taking seriously, and tomorrow that attitude would reflect in your work. So that's the first thing that I see. This is more of elimination criteria than selection criteria. But when it comes to selection criteria, positives, I usually look for people, who have tried different things in the sense that if you're talking about, let's take an example. If there's somebody who is saying, working in X organization, working on user manuals, and the CV somewhere even it has a line saying, uh, also worked on organizations newsletter. Now that's a good thing. That's what I see it as positive. Because over here I see it as somebody who's interested in trying out new things, is generally curious, you know, tries tries different type of writing, takes interest in different type of reading, people who are part of, you know, tech tribes type of thing. That shows passion for their work. That to me that shows passion for their work. They love their work, they have passion, they take care to invest some time into these things. It can be a course on e-learning, it can be anything. I mean, again, there's a huge variety, right? I've seen people CV who said technical writers, but they designed a pamphlet or they designed a emailer for the organization. So for me those things are a thumbs up. In core technical writing, I am not a I don't have anything against certifications, but that's not what usually attracts me as well. If it's there, good. If it's not there, I would not see it as a problem. But I do look for if people can share some of their work, which I know is not always possible because it is under NDA. But if there is an opportunity, that's a that's a good thing. And yeah, basically these things. Then there could be some things which could be very, very specific to the role that you're looking for. If somebody has already worked in that domain, that's obviously a plus. If somebody has worked in a similar organization, that becomes a plus. On one of the tools that you are working on or you want to acquire, and someone has good experience in that, yes. Uh, Mostly this.
Okay, so in your view, how important is knowing tools while you hire?
I would divide that in two things. If again, I would say, because my experience has been more in setting teams where there were no teams. So there was no tools. People were either mostly working on Word. There was no tool. So really tools, what would I look for in terms of tool? I don't know what we are going to use today. So that doesn't become important. But if you're in an organization, if I were in an organization that was already working on certain tools, then I would have definitely preferred people with knowledge or at least exposure to those tools or similar tools. So tools, coming back to this, tools are important. Even in my case, where I looked for people who didn't know, when I didn't even know what we were going to use, I did look for the fact that somebody has worked on, let's say, a data tool. Somebody has worked on at least two, three big famous ones that people use. So at the very least, I wanted people to know at least one tool. And it's a very least, because I didn't know which tool we are going to use. So going by that didn't make any sense. But knowledge of some tool, understanding that tools need to be used, that tools work in a certain way, that is important. Tools are very important, but yeah, I mean, again, it would depend on what clarity you have over tools that you need as a hiring manager.
Okay. So now that we talked about the selection criteria, what is that seals the deal in the interview? How do
For
you
me,
judge a person in
attitude,
the interview?
attitude. See, now when I say attitude, I obviously want to kind of, add a caveat over there. Basics of writing, basics of language, some basics about tool need to be there, because you cannot start from the very first. Like, somebody comes. So what I'm trying to say is, somebody has a great attitude but has never done writing, has no exposure. Now that would not seal the deal. Assuming that basics exist, right? Whatever test we have put up, we have set up, that test is at an acceptable level of at the answers, the way the person has attempted the test is at acceptable level. Assuming all those things, at the end, what seals the deal for me is the attitude. And in attitude, I usually look for people who are again open to learning, curious, open to trying things out. Because again, in my situation, we were setting up things. Everywhere we tried five things, two worked, three didn't, sometimes four worked, where one didn't, and sometimes nothing worked. All of those things happen. So for me, it was important to have people with that attitude, one who would not get bogged down and will not take it personally, and two would still have this thing, okay, this didn't work, let's try something else. So uh, that's what it is for me.
Okay. So if you hire someone who does not have knowledge about the tools or who does not have the domain experience, then how do you ensure that the person learns the tools or gets the domain knowledge so that he can write about the product efficiently?
Both are difficult, right? Let me just put it this. Sorry, give me a minute. Both are difficult, not in the sense that they cannot be done. They have to be done, they should be done. Difficult because many a times in practical life there are not ample resources to get those done. Tools are easier because there are enough courses available online. I think for any tool today, there would be, and most tools themselves, the organizations that publish tools, they themselves have very good, very solid knowledge base. So again, this is where attitude again comes into play. So a person with that attitude of curiosity, attitude of that it is ownership, that I have my work, I have to get it done, would go through all these resources on his or her own, right? What we need to do as an organization or as a team is give them that time, that understand that this person does not understand the tool and this person needs to know the tool. And that time, while initially may seem that things are not happening fast enough, is going to give more benefit. It's a little wrong run, media term, long term thing. It helps. So that is the in terms of support, this is the support I try to provide, that they have the time, they have the opportunity to go through these resources. If there's somebody on the team who is good at it, then you can ask the team, the person to understand, to help the team out. If it's a very, very well defined tool and the way we are using it is in a very advanced manner, then, and again here budget comes into play, the organization has budget, and even signing up for certain courses, we've done that, right? So this happens with tool. Domain gets tricky. Domain gets tricky because most of us work in various domains. So there are definitely writers who are an expert at their domain, but a lot of us are not experts in any domain. And so for domain expertise, we would either have to rely on the larger resources within the organization, which could be your subject matter experts, or on certain domain conferences, domain websites, those type of things. Again, uh, share the list of resources that are available. If the dependence is on people within the organization, that gets a little trickier because you have to get their time. Uh, it's basically a mix of all these things.
Okay, now that was about training the new members, but the existing team also needs to upgrade themselves to stay updated to industry trends. So how do you ensure that the team ensure teams continuous professional growth?
I believe in you can take a horse to the water, you cannot make it drink it. So I would say that anybody who is part of the team, part of the thing, it's a shared responsibility. I'm not saying that I'm not washing my hands of that responsibility, but I would say it's a shared responsibility. So many a times the way it happens is, especially when you're working together, when you're working as a team, the way it happens is it's usually driven by the other person, in the sense that if somebody comes and says, I want to do it, like as a matter of policy, I encourage everybody on the team to spend at least 1 hour. If they don't have 1 hour, at least half an hour every week to just go read, go explore the internet, see what's new, what is new happening. Now chat gpt, with all the chat gpt things, there are a lot of organizations who are trying to, I wouldn't say documentation through using gpt or something, but they are exploring GPT for writing and all. Go read about it. We are not using it tomorrow, but nothing stops us to read about it, right? So that is one part. Uh, if again, then again depends on organizational structure and all. If there are opportunities, like our current organization has Udemy business account, right? So do some courses over there. If we are developing, if your own L&D team is doing some courses, if somebody wants to sign up, like I also tell team to kind of go do a course on a new product, do these things. So basically you encourage the team, and this is for learning. Professional growth, again, it depends on how anybody sees the growth. Unfortunately, in most writing teams, there's not much of vertical growth, right? Because at least in product organizations, and again I'm talking about medium sized product organizations over here. Big size, large size have a different ball game, but medium size and small size product organizations do not have a very big teams. So a lot of vertical growth is not easy, but horizontal can happen. So if I'm working on, if I'm somebody who is working on user manual, I can totally get into learning how to do API documentation also. And those opportunities, I make sure I provide. If a person comes up and kind of says that I want to try this out, I also share with people that these are the opportunities which we have. Like recently we started e-learning in our organization, and a lot of people from our team, they did instructional design storyboards. So that's a different type of writing. That's a about the product you already know, but it's a different approach, different type of writing. uh, Once everyone does, so some people volunteered, some didn't. Some who volunteered, they came back saying that we want to do more. So you provide those opportunities. So I think it's a mix of all these things.
Just to add to Surbhi's answer, Surbhi definitely takes her team till water. So she assigns us the courses, and she doesn't make sure that we are doing it every week, but she will just ask once a week that, okay, did you do the course? So not only pushing, but just assertively telling us that, okay, go and do the course, go and add to your knowledge. So yeah.
And so I think as writers, I think as individuals, Shivani, today it's a knowledge economy. Right? Economy has changed. It's a knowledge economy. Everybody, every role has to understand. For writers, for us, it becomes even more important because I mean, at the end of the day, we earn our bread and butter from writing and knowledge and understanding and explaining. That's what we do. So I feel it is very important for us. I need to take a call for a minute and I would go.
Sure, sure. Surbhi.
Sorry, there was a call from my daughter's school, so I had to take it. Yeah,
No,
sorry.
no worries, Surbhi. So, Surbhi, before we move ahead to the next step, next set of questions, let us see if our audience has any questions. So,
Sure.
I'll hand it over to Shrutika for audience questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Shivani. So we have just one question as of now. So
Mhm.
Divya asks, please can you provide more information on the flat and hierarchical structures that you talked about?
Sure, Divya, I would try to provide. See, flat structure is where hierarchical structures, I think we understand. So we can have a documentation manager, a documentation lead, then senior technical writer, then junior technical writer, maybe associate technical writer, also depending on the structure that organization has. In and then each reports to another. So it kind of associate reports to a technical writer reports to senior technical writer would report to lead technical writer, thereon. In a flat structure, you would still have these designations because they are indicative of your experience and levels and all those fun HR stuff in the organization. But when you work in a team, then each person is responsible for his or her own work, right? And we work together more like, so it's not like, for example, then they were, let's say uh, you are a senior technical writer, I'm a technical writer, though we both have different designations, but as a technical writer, I take care of whatever piece I take care of, and you take care of whatever piece you take care of. I obviously come to you for guidance where I get stuck, but I'm accountable for my own work, and you're accountable for your own work.
And Divya, hope that answers your question. Surbhi has actually explained it as simply as possible. Surbhi, I have a follow-up question
Sure.
to your answer. So, essentially, does that mean that in a flat structure, everybody is an individual contributor?
That would be the way to put it.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much, Surbhi, for answering that. We have one more question
Sure.
from Bharti. Is LinkedIn Learning certification okay? LinkedIn Learning certification has any importance? Where can we get the details about tools to enhance the resume? I guess she's
Uh,
asking from an
from hiring,
interviewer's
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, from hiring
See,
perspective.
I think you can see different countries, different organizations use different tools, right? So I would not say that there is one place which would say that these are the tools you go for. But as a rule of thumb, if you're looking for more in terms of, resume value, Adobe tools, Madcap, some of the new digital adoption tools, WhatFix, WalkMe, User Pilot, these things would definitely add value to your CV. So even if you can do a certification on these and mention those, some data tools like XMetal, uh, again, FrameMaker, Structured, these are all data tools. They would definitely give you a lot of CV value. And in terms, they're
Um,
good tools to learn also. When it's not just CV value, they're good tools to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I agree
Mm.
with you, Surbhi, because you can propagate that knowledge for to similar tools.
Similar
If
tools, yes. And
whenever you move organizations,
yeah,
the tools might not be the same, but you will be able to apply that knowledge to those
knowledge.
tools.
Also, the other thing is also this, that when you learn a tool, sometimes that triggers an idea about how you can document something.
Correct.
Mm.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that also, I mean, it can happen that way. It does happen that way because,
Yeah. Yeah.
a tool provided you such an option, and then you kind of, it triggers a thought. So as I say, any learning would add to your knowledge, and you can use it in different ways. And obviously, it would add to CV also. Now, coming back to the certification question, Shrutika, can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I don't remember it in detail.
Yeah, so Bharti is asking whether LinkedIn learning certifications or certifications that are done via LinkedIn learning do they carry any weightage? I think that's the summary of her question.
Okay. Bharti, again, if we are talking about somebody who is just a fresher and wants to enter into, let's say, technical writing, because over here we are talking about technical writing, then yes, they can add a little bit of weightage. They would, so if you're comparing your CV, let's say it has that weightage with the CV of others who do not have a certification, it would, so to a recruiter, it would make me go, okay, she understands a little bit, at least she knows a little bit, she has gone through some certification. In itself, it would get you a job. My blunt answer would be unlikely. But if you're again, it's a combination. If you're already working as a writer, and maybe you have started your work as a writer, maybe you're working as a programmer, and you want to get into writing, so there is some experience, and you combine the certification, yes, it would add value.
Yeah. Very, very, very well put, Surbhi, because that the question sounds very simple. However, the answer is quite tricky to that.
Yeah, so it
Yeah,
depends on
it's
your
not as simple.
profile, what you're
Yeah,
doing, what they're
true.
looking for. But yeah, I mean, see, all I'm trying to say is, if somebody does a certification from LinkedIn or anywhere for that matter, nothing about the platform, does a certification and says that I would get a good job based only on that, that's unlikely. But when it is supported with other experiences, yes.
All right. Thanks for taking that, Surbhi. We have one more question, but I feel we should take it at the end. It is not relevant to the conversation we have had so far. I think it is best suited for the next half of the conversation. So,
Sure.
yeah. Thank you so much, Surbhi.
Thank you.
Shivani, back to you.
Thank you, Shrutika, for taking up the questions. Okay, Surbhi. So now moving our gears to the next point. Documentation teams are usually called the silent warriors. Many times it happens that the documentation teams are not recognized for its efforts. So how do you ensure that the team's efforts are recognized by the other teams, the product
Oh,
teams,
I'm very
engineering
bad at
teams?
it. I'm very bad at it. Let me be honest about it. I'm really bad at it. So this is something I've been struggling with. I've been trying to learn. So if someone has a thought, has an idea, I would be like really thankful. Uh, Having said that, what I try to do is that, see, this requires a little bit of marketing mindset, which is what I'm saying, that I'm not very good at it. But I do try to make it a point that, and this is something I've learned over a period of time. That's where, like when I was at Emphasis, from when I did that at GT Nexus, by the time I'm going to get at Odessa, I've learned that this has to be done. This must be done. So now I try to do that whenever we do something new, we do a different type of documentation. I try to go out. I So I send out the mail to important stakeholders saying that this is done, try it out. Then with those who show more interest, and as you say that, yeah, that's the truth. That's the harsh truth of the situation. That documentation teams are usually the silent warriors. So even if you send mail and all, it's not like everybody is gonna respond. So people who respond, who take interest, or who are important stakeholders for that particular thing, I do try to reach out to them and ask them that if you had an opportunity to look at it, if yes, then what is it that you feel? If something gets appreciated, one thing I definitely at least try to do is that share the credit. Whoever has done it on the team, whoever has contributed, share the credit. uh, get their names out. So, for example, like at Odessa, when we started the documentation team, and one of the first few things that we published, and they got a lot of appreciation, I made it a point that people who contributed to it, their names are also known to the senior management. Uh, but I think a lot more can be done. I'm not too good at it. But yeah, in general, what we can do is that what we can do as individual contributors, as writers, as each one of us is that so if you're working with a particular team with whom you have worked, you have created the documentation, ask them for feedback and ask them for written feedback. It might sound a little pushy and maybe a little uncomfortable, and that's why probably I'm not too good at it. Is that, but it's important because at the end of the day, more often than not, documentation teams are not launching new products. We are not really talking to customers. So it's very unlikely that a customer would come and say that, hey, I love. And customers, when it comes to feedback, another harsh fact is that customers and readers would tell you what is not there. They are very rarely gonna say that, hey, I found everything I was looking for on the documentation. Unlikely to happen. So seek feedback. Another way is that a lot of the modern tools, these online publishing tools, they have they have these options to like a page or not like a page or share the feedback. If you get something, again, we can only be as pushy with customers. But if you get something on your page, highlight it. I try to look for those things. That if a customer has said something, we highlight. Shivani, you would know that very recently we have started this monthly newsletter in the team. So we every month we send out that these are the things we have worked on. Yeah.
So, since we are talking about the challenges faced by the documentation teams, how do you ensure that the collaboration happens correctly between the documentation team and other teams, as in the product and customer teams? So, which is equally important, right? So, how do you
Which is the
ensure that?
which is the that is the base of it, right? That's where that goes back
Right.
to me. My first anecdote where someone said that when my boss said that have hired 10 people, I said no, I cannot hire 10 people because we haven't really even thought about that part of it. Document every in every organization, every role is somewhere a link between various roles. Nobody works in silos, but documentation per se is a very input driven role. We i mean at the base of it, we cannot even write our release notes if we do not know what is going in a release, whatever be your organization process, whether it's a person shouting out across the hall, or it's a Jira, or it's a DevNet, or you can have process, but at the end of the day, we need that input. We need that input to even start thinking what we have to write. So it's a very input driven role, and that is very important, and that is one of the biggest challenges. And I have talked to people who have worked in very mature organizations, who are working in very mature organizations, documentation wise, like SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, and they also have that challenge. So how do you ensure no one way? Beg, borrow, steal. Yeah, you need to put some processes in place. Yes, you have to start talking about processes, but the fact is those processes also take time to mature. So basically that put those processes, repeat, reinforce those processes, and then they become real. But the good thing is, while it may sound very grim, it is not as grim as it sounds, because the fact is that I have seen when people started, see, in my view, and that's again from my experience, a good document speaks for itself. That's the standing testimony of what value we as technical writers can add to the product, to the organization, and to a BA's life, because then they don't have to, answer 20,000 questions, and they recognize when they see that in a good documentation. And I have seen, at least in three places, once they see the value we can add, they would come to you. So, but yes, it's not precisely a rewarding journey on day one. I mean, again, I'm being very, very upfront about it. But you can have your moments of "I told you so" in your head when you see those people coming back to you, asking you, and it changes from it at many a places. It also changes from first when BAs and experts, they try to tell you this to write, and when they see the value you bring, then they ask you what to write. So all those things happen, but what it does require a certain participation from senior management to make those processes real. But basically, it has to be. I focus on making things more process oriented. So we can repeat that process.
Right, Surbhi. I think this would be a great learning for everyone who is there on the call. So, Surbhi, many individual contributors now aim to become a leader in their later in the later stage of their career. So, would you like to share some tips for them?
See, for me, it just life just took me wherever it took me. But yeah, I would definitely say work on visibility, something I never worked on. If I have to, like, I'm trying to answer this question as if, if I'm going 10 years back, if I have a time machine and I'm meeting younger me, what would I do differently? What would I tell her? And one of the things definitely would be, which I never ever worked on, and I still claim that I'm really bad at, is work on your visibility. Demand your right. Don't let it go. You bring in a lot of value. Talk about that value. People do not always see that value because people do not usually read. So make them see that value. I never did that. I really never did this. I would not claim to have any more tips to it, but I do feel now I should have done that. And I and that's one thing I would say is make people see the value, claim your seat on the table, uh, show your work. People would not see it automatically. If you find a person who see, if you find a manager who sees it automatically, you find a team, you're very lucky, and use that good fortune. But otherwise, claim that right, because we do add a lot of value. We do add a whole lot of value to the product or the service or the project, depending on which type of organization we are working on. Uh, Working in, we add a whole lot of value. Many a time, so it's important that we spell that value out and don't shy away from that. It may look like beating your own trumpet, but be it.
I somewhere read that try selling your product without documentation and see what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Survi, now just talking about the tools. So, deciding what tools to use. So, how do you decide that which tools to use, what platforms to implement for creating and managing the documentation content? So, how do you decide that?
See, go by what needs to be done, in what time it needs to be done. Obviously, budget is a very important aspect, but some of the important things that, again, I have learned to look into, which I initially didn't know. Start with, how are your customers going to access that documentation? How do they access today? Can we make that experience better? So, like, as I said, that I worked in organizations where we started documentation. So really the only way people access documentation was somebody sends them an email and attaches a file with it. Now that is today, but can we make it better? And then you start basically peeling the onion from there, from top. Because at the end, it's important to see that your users, whether internal or external or both, what is their experience in accessing documentation? How would they access it? Are what is typically, are the given the product or the service that is there, what type of security is required? Would it be like an open site? Would it be something which would be behind a firewall? So all these aspects, and then obviously what we need to do, what are the various type of documentation either we publish today or we think we would publish in next 2 to 3 years. It's unlikely to have visibility for more than that, but at least 2 to 3 years. In 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 our in if you're in a situation where I was, where we were starting a documentation team, maybe nobody will be able to give you the answer. So try to create that roadmap. In 3 years, in 2 years, we want to do kind of these two type of documents. It could be just two, doesn't have to be a huge list. And then start working from there, that this is how customers would access it, this is the type of security that's required, these are the type of, is there, would your documentation, given the nature of your product and the documentation, is it going to have too many customizations? Is it going to have is it going to have too many, what should I say, are there too many modules? Is there an opportunity to reuse? If there's an opportunity to reuse, going for something with data or structured framework, structure FrameMaker type of thing makes more sense, because you can reuse those efficiencies, you can draw. What type of search capabilities do you need, or not need? Is it okay that your customers, are all your customers are on the same release? If it's a cloud based product where everybody is on the same release, your requirements are different. But if you have a product where you need to maintain past 15 releases, your requirement becomes very different. So I usually look for these things, and I think these things give us important answers. Best just talk to different stakeholders, talk to customer facing teams. If your organization has a clear distinction, or even if not, people who talk to customers, people who answer customer support teams. They, from there we would know what type of questions people ask, and they become a good feeder. How we can, what type, how would people, because people, these are the people who who hear customer feedback, grievances, problems, delights firsthand. So use these data points. And
Okay.
if when you are selecting a tool, if you're selecting a tool, try to look for that. If my visibility in roadmap is 3 years, it should, we should not need to change it in 3 years. And if we have to change the tool, then how easy or difficult is to take your data from there, move your data to another tool.
Right, right, Surbhi. So, Surbhi, in your view, how important it is to continue learning? What steps do you take to stay informed and continue learning?
I think, I mean, don't, I can go on and on about its importance. uh it's absolutely critical. There's no way, you cannot do without it. Nobody can do without it. Nobody should do without it. And also, given the, again, I'll take a minute. Given the fact that we have immense learning resources at our fingertips, if we want to explore, don't even need to spend a penny. It should learn. So that is there, whether it's new tool, whether it's new trends in the organization, in the industry, whether it's new, as I said, with all the focus on AI. Just, we may not use AI ever, but why not read about it? Stay informed, stay up to date. So one is that. Sorry. What do? I make sure that I spend at least an hour and a half every week, if not more, in understanding, in reading documentation of other organizations and different domains. That helps me a lot. because it helps me see. It's basically more like, this type of session where we are knowledge sharing. That's a silent knowledge sharing. We are not in the same room or talking, but you can see how people are addressing different problems. What type of, even small things like, are they using a lot of visuals? Are they not using a lot of visuals? Are things moving more towards video or less towards video? And if yes, how are people combining different media? So that helps me. And then whenever it piques my interest and I find something interesting, I try to do a course on Udemy or Coursera or LinkedIn Learning. Uh, I also read a lot of articles on Medium. I find their articles really good. This is kind of most of it.
Basically, taking out time from the routine and
Yes,
making sure that
definitely.
we are learning and going through the industry trends.
Yeah, I basically, so I didn't used to do it, and I started doing this down the line when I realized its importance. So I started with, and this I'm sharing, if some of you, and I'm sure some of you would feel that time nahi milta hai, right? So we have to kind of somewhere carve that time out. So I started carving that time out by putting 1 hour every Friday on my calendar. Uh, did I read in all every time on that 1 hour? No, definitely no. But that started a habit. Now I don't need to do it. It doesn't always have to be every Friday, but I know that, you know now it's more like, it's more like if I don't do it, I feel like I haven't completed my work. So it's that way now. But yeah, I started it the other way around, in a forced manner.
Okay. All right, Surbhi. So enough of heavy questions for you. Here's a rapid fire now.
Mhm.
So when measuring success, would you emphasize on quantitative metrics like user engagement and ticket reduction, or qualitative feedback as in user satisfaction and ease of understanding?
Whatever we can capture. Ease of understanding. See, quantitative and qualitative, they are both important, but in our field, it's usually very difficult to measure both very accurately. So whatever we can capture, and then a combination.
Okay. So when you hire team members, would you focus on technical expertise, strong understanding of the domain, or clear and effective content creation and learning attitude?
I would say both. If
But if you have to choose
See,
between one, then
latter, because if you have basic understanding of how to structure content when it benefits your reader, uh, you would definitely have some difficulty if we do not have technical expertise and domain understanding. That is easier to acquire than the latter. If I cannot think like a user and cannot structure my document for a user, that is far more difficult thing to teach from a hiring perspective. If I have to teach one thing, if I have to invest in one type of training, I would invest in the former. That's easier. The second one is more difficult. It's harder. It takes time. It takes practice.
and the last rapid fire. So to boost team morale, do you recommend celebrating achievements and milestones or offering flexible work arrangements?
I would say both. Why can't flexible work arrangement be a reward?
True.
Both. I am not choosing between the two. Both.
Okay.
See, flexible
So
work arrangement makes it easy for people to manage their life and their work, and both with satisfaction. And I mean, the very fact that I'm sitting here and I could request you that I'm going on hold because I need to answer a call from my daughter's school is the flexible work arrangement, right? If I could not do it, I would have had to tell today that, hey, my daughter is in school and I might need to go and pick her up. So, let's cancel it. Let's cancel today's this thing. I can do both sitting here. It's a small example. So yeah, I'm a big user of it.
okay, so I'll hand over to Shrutika again for audience questions now. Shrutika,
Yeah,
over to you.
yeah. Thanks, Shivani. And It has been such an interesting conversation. I had to control myself from jumping in and asking questions right when Surbhi was answering and
Yeah.
adding to it. But I'll keep my questions big aside for the questions that we have received from our audience. Before we move to the question, someone with the initials NR, I don't see the name, has mentioned excellent point. SME relationship building and subtle, consistent education about why we do what we do has helped my team assert our importance in the equation. A snack budget goes a long way towards positive reinforcement. So that's
Yes.
just
That's a good suggestion. Yeah,
affirmation.
thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Amey has asked, he has two questions. First is, how did you go about choosing the authoring tool for your company?
Um, I mean, with us, the situation was, as I said, that like in the first organization where GT Nexus, where I mentioned, we didn't have budget for the tool. So what we did was that we had one wiki. Oh, sorry, her. Sorry, Amaya. Sorry. So
Oh,
yeah.
I'm
So
sorry too.
sorry, Amaya. So we didn't have budget for the tool, so we had to make do with what we had. So we had a wiki tool which we used our internal intranet. We repurposed that into a documentation tool. And once the organization saw the value of of documentation, then we started looking at other tools. Then we started looking at other tools which would help us over there. We had a lot of opportunity. There were use cases for reuse of content across media, across products. So we wanted to look for a data type of tool which enables that reuse. So we started looking over there. Then that's how we chose it. We realized that that would help us. In Odessa, we were already using RoboHelp when I joined, and we did not, we really did not know when I joined that what all do we want to publish, what all do we want to create. So we said that, uh, we picked up Adobe. We picked up Adobe's technical communicator suite because it gave us options of, sorry, two, three tools. So there was FrameMaker if we want to do a structured FrameMaker, if we want to do reuse and that type of, that structured documentation. And then there was RoboHelp, which we were already using. So we kind of thought that gives us more options within the limited, again, budget always is important within the assigned budget. So that's all. And then at Odessa, we enhanced other tools like we introduced digital adoption tool like Whatfix. Now we are going for something called Document 360, which helps us create documentation. Not very good in terms of reuse, but gives basic reuse capabilities. Good for our requirement, and then we can publish it. So it's basically content creation and publication platform. So I don't have to I don't have to really go get budget for publication platform. So it's combination of budget actually becomes a big driver. I would be very upfront about it. Budget, your requirement, what you want to publish, what you need to publish, basically a combination of these two.
Yeah,
So like
true.
in my case, I knew that if I had said that I want to go for madcap and then I want to go for something like zoom.in for publication, uh, I wouldn't have got either. So I
True,
wanted
true.
something which, where I just need to go through one approval and we get a content creation as well as document creation as well as publication platform. So we chose document 360.
Yeah, true. So, I feel that often the decision making process is a one-time opportunity. It cannot go wrong most of
It
the
cannot go
times.
wrong. No, no,
It
it
cannot
cannot.
go wrong.
And you have to own up that decision.
Yeah,
Not just own up in terms of this, own up in terms of time, own up in terms of finance asking you that you got something approved, what happened to that? And that question would come to you.
yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, you have to own up that decision.
Yeah. So Ameya has another question. She asks, what are the challenges of moving from a solo writer to a team leader in the same company?
Very interesting question.
Yeah.
I think what happens is, and I would again answer for myself, people, we are all different individuals and our challenges can be different. It's very difficult to detach yourself as the first thing, because, and that happened at Emphasis when I was the solo writer over there and I was writing. Then when the team started expanding, I could not keep my hands off documentation. So I could not focus on other things. And I am very sure, and if any of those colleagues are here today or anywhere listening to me, I'm very sorry. I'm sure there were certain instances of micromanaging also. And I apologize for those because I'm sure I would have done it because I really could not. And by the time the team came in, so we started with a one-person team. In 3 years, we became 15 people team. I was the first person. So when somewhere first two, three people, you won't feel any difference because you're just two, three people sitting together working on your document. It's good, it's exciting, you're sharing ideas. But when you become a 5 people, 10 people team, then you can't write the way you were writing before. But I always had that itch of, something is getting delayed. Okay, give it to me, I'll do it. Right? Because I knew the product very well by that time. I knew the customer very well by that time. So, and that becomes a problem. That becomes a problem for you as well as others. And I think more for others because for you, because you have to focus on other things. You're not focusing on those. And you're bothering others for no reason, really. None of their fault. So I
True.
think that's one big challenge. Sometimes it's also the challenge that you face from the attitude of other people because they don't take you as a leader. That also happens sometimes because they're used to seeing you that way, and in your head, in their head, that's all you do. So that a little bit of, I wouldn't say image, but a little bit of perception management also needs to be done.
Yeah, that's I think that's not something that is taught. It has to come from within. We
Yeah,
have to.
you will
It
make you will
cannot be
make some
taught.
mistake. You will
Yes,
make some
yes, true.
mistakes, and then you will learn along the way.
Yeah, there's no one formula for
There's
it.
no one formula because it
Everybody's
depends on,
experiences are different.
yeah, it also depends on your own personality, what type of person you are, personality of the people you're dealing with, and the processes in the organization you're in. So it's a combination. All these things play a big role in how that changes.
Correct, correct. So, Ameya, I hope this answers. Yeah, she has mentioned perfect answers, and she thanks you, Surbhi.
Thank you, man.
So, next question is from Charles.
Mhm.
He asks, while many data tools evolving today in the market, what is the intensity of companies that follow data authoring? Are developers really aware of it and uh, demands in the documentation?
Charles, I'm not the best person to answer that because I've not used that many data tools. But wherever I have used, I feel that I don't. Again, let me ask you: by developers, do you need documentation developers or do you mean engineering type of programming developers in the organization?
Charles, if you're here still, feel free to unmute yourself. And Surbhi, I think Surbhi needs some clarification to answer your question.
So, okay, if Charles cannot come online or is not there, that's okay. Let me answer it both ways.
Hmm.
If we are talking about programmers, then I really do not know anything about it. I do not know, what type of adaptation they do, but I don't think they understand much unless again we go and tell them and it's a part of the process. As far as documentation developer, because I've been a documentation developer who has worked on data, I think it's little hard to learn to change your documentation style because there are very specific rules and there are very specific blocks that you follow and templates that you follow. But once you start using it and once you start exploring the reuse feature, like you have, I remember I was very happy first time when I used data that there was this image. So our UI went through a change and there was this top band that I had to change and in some 40 images, and all I did it at one place and done. I was done. I was so happy. Obviously, I had to take out 40 outputs because there was 40, not 40, 20 outputs because those were required. But then imagine changing at 40 places, forgetting one place where you had to change. You remembered it, but it slipped through your mind, all that. So in other words, what I'm saying is that one, as a documentation developer, once you see the value in it, then I think you like it. But yeah, it does require training. That I would say. It's not like I open it and I would be like, voila, I can do it. It would
Hmm.
require training. It would require configuration of your templates, very uh, good configuration of your templates, different type of templates that you use in the organization. So all those things need to be well configured.
Got it. I think Charles could not unmute. Uh, Probably is facing some challenges, but I hope that answers your question, Charles. Next question is from Bharati. She asks, when an interviewer asks you, show your work done in previous organization, but you have signed non-disclosure agreement, how to handle this situation?
I would say honor your agreement. And if you see that also, and it has happened to me, I'm not saying it like, riding a moral high horse. I long back interviewed at a place, I would not name the organization, and I was told to share the work, and I said it's under NDA. And this organization said, HR from the organization, by the way, not a consultant, not a recruiter. This person said that it's okay, send it from your Gmail ID or something. And I was like, I don't want to work there because tomorrow they would have. See, it also to me it represents the character of the organization. If the organization expects me to break the NDA today, then that level of ethics would reflect in various ways. The way they treat the people, the way they treat their employees, it would come. However, having said that, if it's absolutely essential, see, sometimes we are in a situation where I mean, I need a job, this is a good job, I want to get it, I would not want to jeopardize it. What you can offer is you can tell them that you can do a screen share and they can see it. And if your document, the work that you want to show, uh, has customer names or any sensitive information, uh, and you can mask that information and show it on a screen share. I would
Yeah,
ideally suggest honor your NDA, but if you have to do it because that's what the situation you are in, take that route. Do not share.
yeah, sure.
Definitely do not share.
Yeah, that's quite a sensitive thing to ask for, and even for anyone to uh, break the NDA.
Yeah.
Not just from the morality perspective, um, it can get you in a
It
very
can
bad
get you in a
soup,
soup. See,
in a very hot soup.
it a very hot soup. It can be like, it might be one in million cases, but there's no way to tell that this would not be that one. That's the
Correct.
whole thing. It's
Exactly.
not like something that happens every day. And I know a lot of people share their work, NDA work every day. One in a million can get in legal soup, and there's no way to tell which one that would be. That's the thing.
True, true. So I would like to add something here, Surbhi, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, what has worked for me in such cases is, although most of my documentation is on the public domain, so there has never been a problem of sharing my work. But in cases where I had to, and it's not on the public domain, um, I have spoken to the decision makers or the stakeholders in my organization that this piece of information, if I extract it out and share it
Yeah,
on my
that's a very good idea.
portfolio,
Mhm.
yeah, not directly with someone, because again that gets you in a tricky situation. You can create a portfolio. It doesn't have to be a fancy thing. You can create just a collection on Google Drive, take adequate permissions for sharing that from the required people. Just put that extract or a screen
Yeah.
grab probably, and mask the information about your customers or any sensitive information, like Surbhi said. So
Yeah,
that's one way. Hmm.
Amaya just shared, I just read her message. She shared that we can also create our own documents. And Amaya,
Yeah.
that's a good idea. I many times offer that because
Yeah.
Shrutika, quite different from yours. Most of my work happens
Hmm.
to be under NDA. It's not on
Yeah.
public domain, right?
True.
So I usually offer, in that case, I offer that I cannot share, but if you want, I can write for you. You tell me what you want to write about. I would be happy to write. Even if you want me to write a 30-page document, I can write. So many a
Correct.
times I
Correct.
offer that as well.
True. Yeah. So whatever works then in that case,
Whatever
but
works. Yeah.
without breaking the NDA. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah, that's for sure. Don't get into legal trouble.
Yeah. That's the last thing that you would
Yeah.
ever want.
And I
Yeah.
have also realized this is again a change that I have seen over years is uh most organizations understand that now.
Yeah.
When I say
They
I've
do.
seen when I say that, I have an NDA I cannot share. They say okay.
Yeah.
Then we come
That's
to the
true.
next possible thing. Do you have a blog? Can you share that? And for that I can do some writing for you if that helps, and then you share. No, that works.
Yeah. True. True. Yeah. That's the good thing that has been happening. That's a good change that has
Yeah, that's a good
been
thing. Yeah.
happening in the industry. Yeah. So next question is from Divya. She asks, people now prefer watching demo videos or product videos over reading documents. Do you think our careers will be impacted in the near future?
Yes, a little bit. I would not deny that. People do want to watch videos, but I also, and this is again, I don't know, maybe it's my point of view. Maybe, as I say, I'm old, I'm too old to change all those things, but I don't know. But I would just share what I feel. I do feel that there's still place. So all videos, GIFs, uh, you know, digital adoption, TikTok videos, reels, everything has a place because there are different types of readers, different type of people who consume documentation. So I really do not think that documentation is going to go away. Form may change, and that would. So obviously there is a set research that reading spans are becoming low. uh it's so 40 pages documents would not fly, but short documents with visuals, maybe a, a more scenario based documents that just tell you this is where you're stuck, this is what you do, knowledge bases, FAQs, all those things would. So it's like when internet boom was happening, people said that there was this big debate, and I was in college at that time, so I didn't understand at that time, but there was this big debate that said that newspapers would vanish. uh newspapers got impacted after you know the internet boom that we have seen today. Yes, they have. Their their publication numbers have come down, but their online subscribers have increased. So the format of news has changed. You have things like in shorts, which give you one paragraph type of news. So format has changed. Requirement for news has not gone away. So with documentation also, I do not think the documentation requirement would ever go away. And I'll tell you why. One big reason is that documentation still is a legal requirement in statements of work. Whether somebody reads it or not is again a nascent fact. People still want it. And this is what I say. Do I ever buy a phone because its user manual is good? Never. I would not buy a Nokia over Samsung because Nokia does better user documentation. No. But if I buy a Samsung and it does not have a user manual, I am not going to like it. I would go back and return that box saying user manual nahi hai, even if I never open that user manual. So yeah, it's not. It would impact our careers. Yes, it would impact. So that's where our being open to different type of writing, new styles of writing, understanding how people are doing becomes absolutely critical. It would impact. Yes. Would it make us obsolete? No. As long as we are open to trying different ways of documentation that cater to changing tastes, changing behavior, changing demographics.
Correct. So, Divya, I hope you feel more confident now about our careers not really getting sabotaged completely. Uh,
Actually, I would put out a more drastic statement. I think as more, so with AI, this lot of debate is going on,
yeah,
and I think with time, good documentation, and it may not be a typical you know user manual, and it will not be a typical online help. But with time, documentation would become even more important because people there would be less people to support. So
yeah,
self serve is becoming the way of the world. uh, as a matter of fact, oracles and all who used to keep their documentation behind firewall now have their documentation available online.
yeah.
So yeah, it would change for sure. It would not become
Definitely,
obsolete, I don't think so.
definitely, definitely. So before we run out of time, Surbhi, I have one last question for you from
Yeah.
Mohita. Um, so the question goes like this: while working in any software company, do we get some of the documentation from SMEs like developers, especially for API documentation?
In my experience, Mohita, I have not seen developers sharing API documentation. They usually share their code and we have to derive, understand the code and write the documentation.
Mm.
But when it comes to architectural documentation, where you're talking about how your data flows, how the network is set up, many a times SMEs share the documentation that they have created because they have done that during design phase anyways. When they design the
Mhm.
architecture or when they design the product or the feature, they have done it anyways, and then it's a good idea because then we can use it as a base, and they do it they share with us because they don't have to then explain everything from the scratch.
Okay. Got it. So, Moita, I think that answers the your question. That's the end of questions from the audience in the chat box. Shivani, any last thoughts or any last questions that you have for Surbhi?
No, Shrutika. So I would just thank Surbhi for today's conversation. And
Thank
I would like
you.
to tell that Surbhi is my manager, and I started my career as a technical writer with Surbhi. And it's been absolute pleasure working with Surbhi.
Thank you. It's the
Yeah,
same with
that
you. So, coming to that, now I would just connect some dots. I didn't know whether, we are talking about Shivani is sharing this or not. So, Shivani is, when we talked about hiring, so I would just take 2 minutes. Shivani, when Shivani joined us, Shivani was not a writer. Shivani, you were in network support, if I'm not wrong, or QA.
Yes, yes.
Network support,
Networking,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So Shivani was in network support, but Shivani had that, that wiring to explore new things. And Shivani CV said that she wrote help documents, if I remember,
Mm.
for the
Yes,
network
for the support
team,
teams. Yes.
for the support team, and that kind of became. I said, so we interviewed Shivani because we saw that in her CV. We were like, yeah, this seems to be an interesting person because her work is not related to this, but she's putting that time in. So I'm just connecting the dot when Shivani, you asked what you look
Mhm.
for in CV. So in your CV, we look for that, right? So it's what you bring to the table really, and does it meet the organization's needs?
Perfect, perfect. So,
Yeah.
Surbhi, any more last thoughts from you before we
No,
close
I
for the
think it
day?
has been a wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this part
Yeah.
of my Saturday morning. Uh, I look forward to be part of even as an attendee, as a guest for more of the sessions with with Tech Writers Tribe. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you
So
so
thanks
much,
to all of
Surbhi.
you for listening to me. Thank you, Shivani, for inviting me here.
Yeah, thanks, Surbhi. Surbhi, it was a really good conversation. I wish we had more time and we could, really expand on your answers and ask follow-up questions. But in the interest of time, we do have to keep it limited. But yeah, thank you so much, Shivani, for bringing Surbhi to us, and thank you so much, Surbhi, for sharing
Thank
your insights in such a balanced and practical way so that everybody can derive from your experience. It was
thank
wonderful
you.
having you here, and this conversation has been super insightful.
Thank you.
And
Thanks a lot.
thank you very much, everyone in the audience, for joining us on a Saturday morning, and for all your wonderful questions, actually.
Yes, yes, it
And
was very interactive. It was really,
yeah,
I learned a thing or two. So, it was really good.
yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Have a good
So, we
weekend.
will
Bye bye.
keep in touch with you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Bye bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye.